Hello and welcome. Tonight, we journey to the desolate, sun-scorched high desert of New Mexico. We investigate a single event that, like a flash of light in the night sky, ignited a global obsession, pitted eyewitness against government, and gave birth to the entire modern mythology of UFOs, alien bodies, and secret hangars at Area 51. This is a story of a mysterious crash, a shocking press release, and an even more shocking retraction. This is the definitive deep dive into the Roswell Incident. To understand Roswell, you must understand the atmosphere of 1947. America was basking in the glow of post-World War II victory, but a new, colder war was beginning. The atomic age had dawned, filling the air with both technological promise and nuclear anxiety, and the skies themselves had become a source of fascination and fear. On June 24, 1947, just a few weeks before our story begins, a private pilot named Kenneth Arnold reported seeing 9 crescent-shaped objects flying at supersonic speeds near Mount Rainier in Washington. A journalist misquoted him as saying the objects skipped like saucers, and the term flying saucer was born. Arnold's sighting triggered a nationwide wave of hundreds of similar reports. The public was primed, their eyes turned towards the heavens, wondering what was up there. It was into this charged atmosphere that something fell out of the sky over New Mexico. The story begins in early July 1947 on a remote ranch outside Roswell. A rancher named W. Mac Brazel was riding out to check on his sheep after a series of intense thunderstorms the night before. As he rode, he came across something extraordinary. Scattered across a massive area of his pasture, roughly a kilometer long and several hundred meters wide, was a field of strange, lightweight debris. This was unlike anything he had ever seen. According to Brazel and his family, the debris was bizarre. There were pieces of a tough, foil-like material. You could crumple it up in your hand, and when you let go, it would unfold itself, perfectly smooth, leaving no creases. This was the legendary memory metal. There were also small, lightweight I-beams, which seemed to be made of a material like balsa wood but were incredibly strong. On the inner surfaces of these beams were strange, pinkish-purple symbols, described as resembling hieroglyphics. There were also pieces of a brittle, plastic-like substance and fine, thread-like filaments. Mac Brazel, a practical man of the earth, knew this was no ordinary wreckage. He gathered some of the material and a few days later, on July 6th, drove into Roswell to show it to the local sheriff. Sheriff George Wilcox, equally baffled, decided this was a matter for the military. He contacted the Roswell Army Air Field, a RAAF, which was no ordinary airbase. It was the home of the 509th Bomb Group, the most elite and high-security military unit in the world at the time, the very group that had dropped the atomic bombs on Japan. The base intelligence officer, Major Jesse Marcel, was sent to investigate. Marcel, a decorated officer from WTBasa, followed Brazel back to the ranch. He would later state that he, too, was stunned by the unearthly nature of the material. He and his team gathered up as much of the debris as they could and transported it back to the base. It was the next day, July 8, 1947, that the story exploded. The base commander, Colonel William Blanchard, ordered his public relations officer, Lieutenant Walter Haut, to issue a press release. The release was unambiguous and sensational. The many rumors regarding the flying disc became a reality yesterday when the intelligence office of the 509th Bomb Group of the 8th Air Force, Roswell Army Air Field, was fortunate enough to gain possession of a disc through the cooperation of one of the local ranchers. The disc was flown to higher headquarters. The Roswell Daily Record newspaper ran a banner headline that would become iconic. RAF captures flying saucer on ranch in Roswell region. The story went viral, hitting newswires across the globe. For a brief, shining moment, it seemed the greatest secret in human history had been revealed. Then the hammer came down. The military's response was swift and absolute. Within 24 hours, the story was killed. Major Marcel was ordered to fly the debris to 8th Air Force headquarters in Fort Worth, Texas. There, he was met by his superior, General Roger Ramey. When Marcel was brought into a map room to show reporters where he found the debris, he returned to find the strange material he had collected had been swapped out. On the floor of General Ramey's office was the wreckage of a common weather balloon with a radar reflector kite. Ramey announced to the press that the whole thing had been a colossal mistake. The flying disc was nothing more than a misidentified weather balloon. Major Marcel was ordered to pose for photographs with the mundane debris, a look of humiliation on his face. The official story was set. The Roswell incident was closed. The world was told to move on. And for 30 years, it largely did. The story faded into a minor, quirky footnote in the history of the 1947 UFO flap. But in the late 1970s, the story was resurrected with a vengeance. UFO researchers, including Stanton Friedman, began to track down the original witnesses. And what they found was a story far more complex and terrifying than a simple crashed disc. A flood of first-hand and second-hand testimony emerged from retired military personnel and local civilians who had been silenced for decades. Major Jesse Marcel, now a retired lieutenant colonel, went on record stating that the weather balloon story was a complete fabrication, a cover-up. He insisted until his death that the material he handled was not of this earth. The story he told was no longer just about a debris field. A second, more significant crash site had allegedly been discovered closer to the town of Corona, a site that contained not just the main body of a craft, but its occupants. This is where the Roswell legend transforms into the modern alien myth. Glenn Dennis, a young mortician in Roswell in 1947, came forward with a chilling story. He claimed he received several strange calls from the airbase on the day of the incident, inquiring about the availability of child-sized, hermetically sealed coffins, and asking about chemical preservation techniques for bodies that had been exposed to the elements. Later that day, he said he went to the base hospital, where he saw strange metallic wreckage in the back of an ambulance and was confronted by a frantic nurse he knew. She described a secret autopsy she had been forced to assist with on several small non-human bodies with large heads and big eyes. The next day, Dennis claimed, he was visited by military police and threatened into eternal silence. The testimonies piled up. The family of Sheriff Wilcox confirmed that the military had threatened to kill them if they ever spoke about what the sheriff had seen. General Arthur Exon, a former commanding officer of Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, where the wreckage was allegedly flown, confirmed in an interview that the debris was extraterrestrial and that the official story was a cover-up. And in 2002, a bombshell emerged. Lieutenant Walter Haut, the man who wrote the original flying saucer press release, had left a signed, notarized deathbed affidavit to be opened only after his death. In it, he confirmed that the weather balloon story was a lie. He stated that he had personally seen not just the craft, which he described as a metallic, egg-shaped object, but the bodies of its occupants. He confirmed that the entire weather balloon story was a cover story concocted at a high-level staff meeting to quell public hysteria. But if it wasn't a weather balloon, and it wasn't an alien spaceship, what was it? In the 1990s, in response to congressional inquiries, the U.S. Air Force declassified the true nature of the project they claim was the source of the confusion: Project Mogul. This was a top-secret Cold War project that used massive trains of high-altitude balloons, equipped with sensitive microphones and radar reflectors. Their purpose was to float over the Soviet Union and listen for the sound waves of their secret atomic bomb tests. The Air Force argued that one of these Mogul balloon trains with its metallic radar reflectors and strange materials was what crashed on Mac Brazel's ranch. Brazel, an isolated rancher with no knowledge of such secret projects, had simply found something he couldn't explain. The military, desperate to protect the secrecy of their vital nuclear espionage program, had no choice but to create the weather balloon cover story. The Project Mogul explanation is the official, skeptical explanation for Roswell. It accounts for the strange materials, the military secrecy, and the cover-up, but it is not without its own significant problems. Critics argue that the materials used in Project Mogul, while secret, were not unearthly. They were balsa wood, foil, and plastic, materials that a rancher would likely have recognized. It doesn't account for the memory metal or the strange hieroglyphics described by multiple witnesses. Most glaringly, the Project Mogul explanation says nothing about the alleged bodies. To address this, the Air Force released a second report, stating that the bodies were likely misremembered and distorted accounts of crash test dummies that were used in high-altitude parachute tests in the region, but these projects took place in the 1950s, not 1947. For UFO researchers, this explanation was an insult, a flimsy attempt to dismiss the testimony of dozens of credible witnesses. The Roswell incident remains a perfect storm of a mystery. It is a story with three potential truths. The first is the mundane explanation. It was a secret military balloon, and the story of alien bodies is a myth built up over decades of exaggeration and wishful thinking. The second is the sensational truth. It was a genuine extraterrestrial craft, and the United States government has successfully maintained the most significant secret in human history for over 75 years. The third is a hybrid. It was a secret and unusual human-made craft, perhaps a captured Nazi experimental plane or an early atomic-powered device. And the alien body stories are a later embellishment. The truth of what crashed in the New Mexico desert in July 1947 may never be known, but its legacy is undeniable. Roswell was the flashpoint, the event that transformed flying saucers from a passing curiosity into a powerful, enduring cultural phenomenon. It created the very archetype of the government cover-up, planting a seed of distrust in official narratives that has blossomed into the sprawling conspiracy culture of the modern age. Roswell is more than just a UFO case. It is the origin story of our modern relationship with the unknown.